Morning, Joe. Morning, Rotarians and guests.
Good morning, Sergeant.
Sorry about the silent bell this morning. Somebody stole the hammer or the mallet or whatever it is. I'll use it. I'm Ron Strobel, the Sergeant at Arms, and this morning our invocation is by Phil Tobin.
Morning, Rotarians.
Good morning.
Heavenly Father, we are grateful to you for giving us our community of Rotarians in Hudson and for the many opportunities to understand how we can use our collective talents to make our world a better place. In your name we ask it. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Phil. We seem to be missing a songmeister this morning. But in the meantime, pledge and four-way test will be led by Jim McKay, who we're glad to see back.
Ron, we needed a hammer down at our Williamsburg Club.
So that's where it is.
If you would join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if you would join me in the four-way test. First,
Is it the truth?
second,
Is it fair to all concerned?
third,
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
and fourth,
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
and fifth, will it be fun?
Gail, you're looking the other way. Would you like to lead us in song? Or?
I think we have a new star here.
Oh, wonderful.
Big pressure. Big pressure. I guess this morning we will sing America. Oh,
Beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains' majesty, above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea.
It's going to be on America's Got Talent next. And our president, Allison Feaster, as soon as Jimmy quits harassing her.
So we know what today is, don't we?
Wednesday.
College Colors Day, right? It's so good to see many of you dressed up or wearing something with your college colors on them. So everybody who's got some college colors on, would you stand up? All right, so we've got Michigan, right? And your college?
Sienna.
Siena?
Michigan.
Oh, two Michigans. We've got James, Ohio State. No?
Well, my daughter goes.
All right, his daughter goes there.
I went to the University of Pennsylvania.
Oh, that's right, University of Pennsylvania.
Bill and I graduated.
Aha. All right, Tom, Paige,
Wisconsin Whitewater.
Wisconsin Cheesehead. All right. All righty, we've got Heidelberg.
Student princess.
Oh, look at that hat on Ed Sogan. Beautiful fit. Jimmy. John Carroll. Anybody else? Well, thank you. Appreciate the spirit. Oh, wait a minute. Who did I miss? Who's a Buckeye? Oh, art. Now I'm lighting these, so hopefully you'll remember.
235-member Michigan Marching Band.
All right, I'm going to talk over it. Who's making a difference? How are we making a difference?
Of Professor Jamie L. Nix, the M Fanfare.
Lighting up Rotary. Thanks, Ed. Let's try it again. Oh my gosh, we are sick. We got to work on it. All righty, so how are we making a difference? Oh, thank you. All righty, I want to thank you to the greeters, Jim Ahern and Joe Zeptowski. Next month, we have Tom Page and Larry Santon as a reminder. Thanks to the AV team. Good to see James back from his duties on the school board. Jimmy Sudfin. Is Ron Barnhouse here? I didn't see him. Tom Page, Larry Santon, and Samantha Mintz. Thanks, Samantha. Next, our club secretary, our beautiful voiced Chris Barker, will introduce our guest.
Good morning, Rotarians. Please join me in greeting our visitors. If they would please stand up so we can give them a warm welcome. First, we have James Haneke visiting us from Dollar Bank. Good morning, James. And then we have our guest speakers today, Joe and Marianne Doman. Thank you very much for joining us. And Jim McKay is in the house also. Make sure we all greet him. Thank you.
Welcome, Jim. It's good to see your shining face at the bad boy table. Joe, would you like to come up for just a minute and say a few words? Oh, I'm sorry, Jim. I wrote Jim and said Joe. Figures, right?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jim Haneke. I'm with Dollar Bank, just recently joined Dollar. Background is I'm a CPA by background and have over 25 years of commercial banking experience in private banking. Live here in Hudson with my wife, Nancy. We live up on the north end of town. We moved in 2000. I have 3 boys, and I'm just thrilled to be a guest today. Thanks very much.
All right, are we ready to play? Jeopardy! Rotary! Do we have any music? No music today. I guess it was too much with the Michigan fight song, huh? All right. Ready?
Ready.
Okay. I will give the clue and you will give the answer in the form of a question, and Ron enforces that you raise your hand. This is like a triple double. These 3 Rotarians attended Westminster College. Does anybody know anybody? He's got one right, Dan Williams. All right, Bob.
Jim Ahern, Dan Williams, me.
Okay, if it's in the form of the question, you would win. He didn't. No, you won last time. Come on, somebody else.
Who are, sorry, we learned English.
That's right, who are? Who is?
Who are Jim Ahern, Dan Williams, and Bob.
I think they failed.
You think they failed?
He can't win because he has a Michigan jacket.
None of the finalists won.
All right, nobody went, which is too bad because I had Flarp noise putty for you. I'll have to say that for another time. So the 3 Rotarians who attended Westminster College, Bob Cramp, Dan Williams, and Jim Ahern.
We are the Titans.
You are the Titans, mighty, mighty Titans, right? All right. 5-minute Rotarian, Kelly.
Where'd it go? Oh, found it. Well, I think most of you heard from me, I don't think it was even a month ago. So we're not going to talk about me today because that's relatively boring. And those that know me know that I probably rarely would ever talk about myself regardless. So what we're going to talk about as soon as James gets to, here we go. That didn't come out very well. Is who are we? I think the consensus of this 5-minute thing was, and this goes, I think, a year or so back, because we've talked about ourselves quite frequently, but the consensus is getting to know everybody. Well, to be honest with you, I think I know just about everybody that's in here, and if I go like this, can you make the slide go to the next? Oh, what do I hit?
This goes forward, back,
Don't hit those. Great. This is who we kind of are. And we've been... This is who we are. And so for the most part, if you walk in this room, and everyone can attest to this, the first thing that you take notice of when you've been here a number of times is where we all sit. Because we don't sit we sit in the same spot just about every time we walk into this building. And while this table that I sit at is referred to as the bad boy table, I'm not exactly sure where it got its name from. And there are lovely ladies that sit at this table as well. And clearly this lovely lady is not a boy. This table has its own designation. But if I were to come over to this table, I think I'd find you guys sit together every Wednesday, do you not? And if I were to sit at this table over here, I would guess that I'd be speaking with or sitting with who the speakers are. That seems to be that table there. Poor James is the only one that seems to not have a table. You're the floater. Smithy, you would be in the same boat, I guess, now. No tables. So that's kind of who we are in terms of just looking out who we, in terms of just visual. The other part is we either likely live or work in Hudson, or both, for that matter. And that probably makes us all unique as well. I don't think, if I saw a show of hands, I don't think anyone doesn't fall into one of those two categories, correct? You either live here or you work here, okay? The other thing you'll notice is we come from all forms of life. It's probably, let me rephrase that. We come from all walks of life. Although, you know what, the former was probably more accurate, to be perfectly honest with you. All of us have some occupation that either we have done, we are doing, or we would like to do. One of those three. And we all fit in that category. But when we come here, I'm not so sure, in my recollection, that it really mattered. I don't think many of us sit around and talk about what we do in our daily lives. I think we tend to know each other a little bit outside of that box. I'm going to ask some people to stand, but I need my cheat. Dick's not here. Andy's not here. Notice, not going to get a lot of people to stand here. Gail, would you stand? Den, would you stand? Jimmy, where are you at? You're always at the floating tables. Ron, stand? Bob's not here. Tom, would you stand? Nope, not Phil, and then your son's not here. I don't see Tom around.
Want me to stand or Tom?
No, you stand. Your son's not here. Admonish him for that. And then myself. We are the oldest active members in this club. So look around. These folks have been with this club for the longest period of time that are still active in this club, which is somewhat amazing. And you notice most of them are not here today. It's unique in that we are all brought together probably by this one and only slide, every one of us knows something on that screen, and that's what you recognize yourself when you come to Rotary. And it's kind of unique, and it's unique only to us. So those of us that are Rotarians would kind of know that. There isn't a single thing up there that we probably all don't know, but there are some things out there that we're a little more attached to than others. And that's what makes us who we really are. And we're very unique. This club is not a very large club, but at the same token, it's not a very small club either. But I would be willing to bet I could ask any one of you to stand, and you'd be able to pick out the names of everybody in this club, which is a bit unusual, especially for some of the folks that haven't been with the club all that long. But you know who they are, and you know a little something about them. Maybe not a ton, but you know a little something about them. And then that's what makes us unique in this club. So this time spent was much better than talking about moi, because for all intents and purposes, that's really boring. But it's more important because I think the gist of what we're trying to do is to get to know all of us. But I'm going to be honest with you. I think you all know each other pretty well. And that's kind of unique. So everybody applaud themselves. And if I could, I'd say dismissed and we could all go home, but can't do that.
Thank you. Great job. As he's trying to turn off the microphone, a reminder, we're passing around a tablet. Liz Ramsey, our fellow Rotarian, is recovering from hip replacement surgery, and she needs some food. So I've sent the email to everybody, but it also gives the not the directions, but her address and what her requirements are. So please sign up and help her out. All right, Duncan, are you ready?
I am, ma'am.
All right, so are we. Duncan Tanner.
Good morning, fellow history buffs. Today, coffee mugs. No, I'll put those over here. 2 lives, 2 heroes. Today we recount 2 lives, and in doing so, reinforce the premise that more than the greatest victories of the most righteous armies, it is the courage and resolve of the individual that always overcomes evil. Charles Winthrop Kopp was a Vermont native and Oberlin College graduate who moved to Japan in 1916 to teach English in the Japanese government school. As early as 1918, Kopp became aware of anti-American sentiments fueled by the emperor, who told his people it was Japan's destiny and divine right to rule the world. By 1933, Germany's propaganda machine is openly urging Japanese students to hate the United States. And when in class one day, Kopp called Hitler, and I quote, "the world's biggest unmitigated liar and a skunk," he is arrested. Charged with espionage and questioned almost nonstop for 4 months, Kopp is released for lack of evidence. On December 8, 1941, just 1 day after Pearl Harbor, Kopp is imprisoned as an enemy of the state, held for over a year, and upon his release followed constantly by plainclothes detectives. He is deported to the United States in 1942. Kopp recounted years later that while he was treated kindly during his time in imprisonment, such was not the case during the 4 months of interrogation. The authorities would alternately beat, cajole, and bribe him in an effort to get him to say that he was a spy and to turn in fellow teachers and expatriates as collaborators. The tough New Englander, fortified by the truth and a hatred of tyranny, did not break once. On another front, Chuni Sugihara, the Japanese consul general in Lithuania, is watching with increased concern the restrictions being placed on Jews flooding into Soviet-occupied Lithuania from Poland, which had been recently conquered by Hitler's blitzkrieg. The Soviets had no particular love for these Jewish refugees and made it nearly impossible for them to obtain exit visas. Now, Sugihara had never even met a Jew prior to working in Lithuania, but it became clear to him that they were victims of both German terrorism and Soviet prejudice. As the plight of the Polish Jews trapped in Lithuania worsened, Sugihara could no longer simply be a spectator. As a Japanese citizen, he was bound by the codes of a very strict society that valued adherence to rules above all else. But as a member of the ancient order of the samurai, he felt a greater call to help the defenseless. You see, his job in the consulate was to approve travel visas. Sugihara and his wife, for a period of 28 days, with little food or sleep, personally created and signed visas for over 6,000 Jews. That's 214 visas per day, enabling them to escape only days before Hitler sealed off occupied Europe for the remainder of the war. Certainly, had Sugihara been caught, he would have been tried and executed for acts of treason. During a speech he delivered to the Rotary Club of Tokyo only weeks before his death in 1986, Sugihara summed up the experience. They needed help, he said, and I was glad I could make the decision to give it to them. Two men from different worlds, connected only by courage, a loathing for inhumanity, and one more thing. They were both Rotarians. Thank you.
As always, fascinating and interesting. Okay, are you ready to introduce our speakers?
Oh, we did win one game. The trophy is for, there used to be a Rotary softball tournament every summer, and that trophy, we were runners-up, so I thought McKay being in town, and he was our coach, that he should receive something. I probably have overdone it, so I'm going to take off. Oh, gee, I got the same shirt on.
You're not gonna take any more off. That's $2.
Our speakers this morning are old friends from St. Mary's, Mary Ann Doman and Joe Doman. It's kind of interesting. Thanks, Mary Ann and Joe, for giving me this reminder. Kate, Drew, and Grace were all members of Service Learning, and Kate and Drew were recipients of Rotary scholarships. Where did Kate go?
Kate went to the Ohio State.
The Ohio State, and Drew went to Miami of Ohio. They've been married for 30 years. They have 4 children. They are, all 4 children are members of the 13-year club. There's a very, very nifty organization at St. Mary's called Life Team. They are core members of that. Joe is a vice president and senior portfolio manager for UBS. At the age of 6, I guess this is when he started his bucket list, he flew on the Ford Tri-Motor, which used to fly from Catawba to Put-in-Bay. That was, I think you said you were 6 years old? Well, I guess that was what started him on his travel bug. Marianne and Joe hiked 10 miles each day for 11 days through the northern part of Spain. So please welcome Marianne and Joe Doman. And if you read Hudson Monthly last fall, they're on the cover.
Thank you, James.
You bet.
Yours? We wanted to share with you our... We wanted to share with you our Camino de Santiago, and I wanted to begin with a quick picture and description of what it is. The Camino de Santiago is an ancient pilgrimage trail. The trail has been hiked now over almost 1,800 years. So from the south of France to Santiago in the northwest corner of Spain, pilgrims have been moving across Europe to get to Santiago. And in those two words, there's some important richness. First, the word camino. It is the Spanish word for way or for path or journey. And then Santiago is the name of the town that you finish the path or the journey in. But Santiago in Spanish is also St. James. So it is the way of St. James. Oh, thank you. I have that. James warned me of that. So I think everyone in their life is on a journey, somehow, some way. Everyone's on a path. You're either on a path to get more sales, to get more results, to get better yourself, to get a significant other in your life. And certainly Rotarians are on a path to do service above self. The path to Santiago, or the pilgrimage, is not without its cousins. The cousins of the pilgrimage to Santiago are certainly this pilgrimage, where millions of people come to the Ganges River in the Hindu faith to bathe and remove their sins in that fashion. Certainly in the religion of Islam, there's the pilgrimage back to Mecca, which each Islamic is to try and accomplish once in their lifetime. And then, dude, sometimes you just got to get back home. If you'll recognize this, this is one of those famous turtles that you might have seen in some of the Disney movies. And in the Disney movies, he's always saying dude, but sometimes dudes just got to get back home. Marianne and I traveled to Seabrook Island a couple of years ago, and one of the things that just fascinated me was the loggerhead turtles that travel through the oceans all across the world for a number of years, but they always come back home to the place that they were born. To nest and to lay their eggs. So they always come back home. So this is the path that we took. This is the way of St. James. This was our Camino. Now, if you do the classic Camino, it's 500 miles, and it's at least 40 or 50 days. But to qualify for the pilgrimage certificate, as a Compostela is the name of it, you need to travel 120 miles. So if you start in the town of Sarria and you hike to Santiago across northwestern Spain, you qualify for that certificate. Our trip began in Madrid. So we flew to Madrid from New York, and really, if you think about it, our pilgrimage began in Madrid, although we weren't hiking in Madrid. Do you want to describe that slide, Mary?
Well, I think we ought to start a little bit about how we even decided to do it. So Joe's a big bucket list guy, okay? As Jimmy mentioned, there's things he just says, Mayor, we got to do this. I want to do this. I want to do this. So we had some miles on British Airways that we had 2 free round-trip tickets, and I wanted to go to Ireland. So he is our consummate vacation planner. I say we want to go somewhere, and he researches it and finds how we're going to do it and the fun things to do, and he makes it a project. So he's looking up Ireland, goes, Mayor, sorry to tell you the weather in Ireland is not really that great in September and October. And we had just seen the movie The Way. I don't know, has anyone seen that movie? Okay, a few of you have. It was produced by... I'm drawing a blank. Martin Sheen, whose roots are from northern, he's from the area of Galicia, and he's really a devout Catholic, and he and his son produced this movie, and it's a story of a man who loses his son in the beginning of the pilgrimage. His son was really wanted to see the world, and he died in the Pyrenees Mountains on the beginning of the hike. So he goes back to retrieve his son's ashes, and he decides in his son's place that he's going to make this journey. And his experiences, both in meeting people along the way and his journey of faith to get there. So Joe's like, but you know what, Mary, checked all the weather in Spain, looking really good. I think we better go hike the way. And I'm like, okay, sounds good. So then, like weeks later, he has me in a sporting goods store trying on 40-pound backpacks. And I'm like, I said, okay, I will go on the way, but here's my requirements. I am not sleeping in places where millions of other pilgrimage people have slept. You know, like I'm not doing the albergues, which are like the
It's a couple steps below a youth hostel.
yeah, it's like a youth hostel for old people, okay? So you go there, and in the movie, that's what Martin Sheen did, you know, because he did it the way his son was going to do it, and he carried the 40 pounds, and every night he had to wash out his socks, and he had to do, you know, communal showers, and I'm like, this is a vacation. If I'm taking 2 weeks off work, we got to do it a different way, pal. So I'm like, I need to sleep every night in a bed that's enclosed in 4 walls. So I'm only sleeping with you. I have to have a shower every day, and it can't be with other people around. and so those are the 2 things. So he's like, all right. And I said, I'll take a day pack and I'll hike anywhere all day long. But at the end of the day, you're the only mug I want to see in my bed, you know, across the room at night. So that's sort of how he began to sort of plan, and we ended up doing the tour through 206 Tours, which was actually a Christian, a Catholic touring company. So we toured with a priest, so we were able to have mass. Is that a picture? Is that Father? I can't tell from here. But we did that since it was somewhat a journey of the hike and the physical. You know, we prepped for, and we hiked all summer to make sure we could. More for Joe that he could go that many miles a day. I'm just saying. But it gave us an opportunity. We met a lot of different people from around the world, but we were able to hike with a priest. So we had mass every morning as we started our journey during the day, which was really nice and reflective to start that. So I'll let you.
Go ahead, describe that slide. We love that slide.
We started in Madrid, so we had to fly into Madrid. That's where we had a fabulous, Javier was our tour guide, and he just really obviously knows all the local area. So our first day, we gather in the hotel 4:00, and he takes us on a walking tour of Madrid. And it was really a whole food tour, let me tell you. We ate really well. We were not like Martin Sheen in the movie. We ate good stuff. This is a cafe that had the richest hot chocolate, and then you got to dip, I can't remember. Churritos. So that's how we sort of got to meet our group that was from all over the United States. We're sitting eating chocolate and churros, so it was great.
This is the name of the facility in Madrid where we started our trip. So again, like Marianne said, the food was a lot about our trip, and our trip was a lot about food. The Camino de Santiago is unique in that the path is very well marked. One of the things that I love about Rotarians is that you all wear pins. So you are very well marked so that we know who you are. I'm wearing the pin of Santiago today, which is the scallop shell that you see all along the 500 miles of the Camino. The scallop shell is an important and a rich symbol for a couple of reasons. One is the fact that the bag that I carried had a scallop shell on it to show that we were pilgrims. And on the first night, our first meal there in northwestern Spain, right not far from the ocean, we were eating scallops from the local fishmongerer. At the same time, the scallop is very important in defining the trip, because if you think about it, the rays of the scallop all come from different directions, as all pilgrims do, and yet they all arrive at the same point. So this yellow arrow and scallop shell was throughout the trip. Very well marked.
We only got lost one day. We were coming from lunch, and we were talking too much. That was probably my fault. And because it goes through cities, like you're going through someone's farm, and on their barn you'll see the yellow arrow. So you're like, could this be the way? And the farmers are waving to you, and the little estada babas and their babushkas and stuff. But one day we had a hike back about half a mile back. We were like, we don't see the arrow, because like every quarter mile or something, you would see the arrow, so you knew you were on the right path.
That's another great thing about having this scallop shell on the back of our backpack, is that when a woman in her front porch saw us hike by her home, she immediately recognized us as pilgrims, and she knew we were off the trail. She spoke no English, but we knew exactly what she was saying, that we were off the trail. So they're very creative about the way they mark the way, they mark the path. There's another tradition of the Way of St. James, and that is what's called a credencial. This is like the passport or like the autograph book that you might have carried through Disney World with your children or your grandchildren. But this is something that needs to be stamped every morning or every evening as you travel through northwestern Spain at each of the facilities that you visit, to prove that you did the path, the way in succession, so as to qualify for the pilgrimage certificate. Now, interestingly enough, every morning, Marianne mentioned, we started with Mass in a Catholic church, but at the same time, along the way, we just seemed to acquire a lot of stamps from a lot of different bars and coffee houses as well. So ours wasn't just limited to churches and hotels. It was pretty full. On the path along the way, one of the important scenes and one of the important traditions is what's called the Iron Cross. And this is symbolic for a number of reasons. You can see how high that hill is and how high that crucifix is. The tradition of the Iron Cross is, in the medieval times, the pilgrims that used to hike from far reaches of Europe to Santiago at one time used to actually bring a stone or a brick with them to help build the cathedral in Santiago. So as they brought those bricks or stones, some of them started a tradition of leaving some behind as a symbol of a prayer, or as a symbol of someone they wanted to remember, or as a symbol of a sin, a bad habit that they wanted to leave behind. So this Iron Cross, the Crucero de Ferro, has become quite built up with a whole bunch of rocks from people leaving things behind. I brought 5 stones myself, and I left all 5 behind there with some of my prayers and some of my bad habits. We talked about the food. Here's one example. This is pulpo. This is the octopus. Melide is the town in the middle of the way, very well known for the way that they prepare octopus with the paprika. Beer. We had great beer in northwestern Spain. Estrella Galicia is probably the most famous brand there. Estrella means star, and Galicia is the region that we were traveling through. They have these very creative beer taps. I kind of focused in on the beer taps a lot. I thought they were ceramic. They were really well made, very creative. And then there was the Iberico ham. Can't see it too well, but that is ham hanging from the ceiling there in a restaurant. These pigs are fed acorns and chestnuts, and it produces the most wonderful ham. It's, of course, dried like a prosciutto. Just beautiful scenery across northwestern Spain. Kind of the breadbasket of Spain, if you will. The Camino really filled our eyes every day with some sort of beautiful sight. There's a pilgrim.
A little bit about it, what a typical day. People say, well, how could you have walked that many miles? But when you think about it, we had a set path. At night, they eat very late in Spain. If you've traveled across Europe, they typically have eat around 8 o'clock or 7. So a typical day, we'd have Mass, we'd meet at 8 o'clock for breakfast, we'd come down, and then we'd have Mass at 9, and we'd start off about 9:30. But when you break it down, the one day we did have to hike about 17 miles, but most days on average were somewhere between 11 and 14. But that's really what you do all day long. And unlike a race or a marathon, there's no extra points for getting there first. It's really about your way. And so Joe and I would walk at our pace. Sometimes we'd start off walking with people from our group, but sometimes, you'd stop. There's no public restrooms along the way. That's why we ended up in so many bars and coffee houses, because when you have to use a restroom, you have to go in and get a beer or get a coffee. So it was really, I don't want to say that we strolled, but it's not like you're like, we got to get this done in 2 hours. The way is about the journey and about stopping, looking at stopping and seeing the farms and poking around and taking pictures of the flowers. We'd sometimes say a rosary. We'd meet up with other pilgrims from other places. We met a gentleman from Northern Virginia where we lived for 4 years, and he was making the way after he lost his wife and was just really trying to figure out what to do with the rest of his life, that now he had become a widower. So we walked for hours, with him one day, and then we met another character with his dog that was from a northern African country. Yeah. There he is. And so he only spoke French, so I didn't speak with him very much. Joe is able to speak French and communicated with him. And a lot of times you just walk in silence. But, you'd start and we'd get back into the next town about 4:30 or 5 o'clock. So it really was about meandering through Spain over a 7, 8, 9 hour period of time. We always met around 2 o'clock for lunch because they wanted to check and at least make sure your feet were okay and that kind of thing. The oldest person in our group who did it was 75, and I think the youngest person in our group was probably in their mid-40s. So in the fall, when you don't have the college students and some of the young people in the summertime, the average age we felt like we were not the oldies. We felt kind of young on the path during that time. So it was really not as hard as you would think. And every night our guide would kind of give us an elevation. So he'd say, okay, you're going to be walking uphill for the first 5 miles today, and then it'll taper off, or you're going to be going through forest, so you're going to be crossing over some streams, little bridges, or he'd say it's going to be flat all day today. You're going to be crossing through farmlands, and this is what to look for, or make a note of, make sure you look at this, or you're going to be passing through a lot of little towns today, and you'll really enjoy seeing this little shop or something. So you really saw a lot of different things as we went along.
One of the things that we saw a lot of was images of St. James. So this is St. James the El Peregrino, which is the Spanish word for pilgrim. This I call first down St. James. I sent this to all my friends from Notre Dame, and I thought it was appropriate. It's college day. We can talk about Notre Dame here for a minute. They have touchdown Jesus. They have a statue, we're number one Moses. So I call him first down St. James, pointing the way to Santiago. Marianne talked about Jacques here. This was his 15th Camino. He started in Lourdes, France, and one day Marianne and I saw him on the way, and I got to strike up a conversation with him in French, which was really poor French on my part, but it was enjoyable nonetheless, and he patronized me. But then we saw him at the end of one day hiking, sitting on the curb in the town with his little dog, and Marianne said to me, "Oh, look, Joe, he's got a little scallop shell out there just like we do." And I said, "Marianne, that's not a scallop shell. He's actually begging alms. He was relying on the charitable benefactors of all the other pilgrims to help pay his way and to help feed him and to help house him as he traveled. So he was relying on the hospitality of the other pilgrims. The hospitality on the way is just fantastic. We would walk up to a farm, and the farm owner would have a table out there with fresh raspberries, with fresh blackberries, with lemonade. There would be multiple locations that we found, farmers that just knew that pilgrims were coming and took good care of us along the way. We arrived at the pilgrim's office in Santiago to apply for our certificate, and this is the cathedral that was built in the 11th century. So this was our ultimate destination.
Many people, when they enter the area around the cathedral, is they do the last, I don't know, 400 steps on their knees. So you would see people enter into that area on their knees and crawl to the front steps when you would come to it. Like they had, especially if you had done 500 miles and had been hiking for 35 or 40 days, it was pretty remarkable.
This is the actual relics of St. James that are at the Cathedral of Santiago. It is encased in silver, silver that was sent from the Mexican silver mines. Mexico has a great faith and devotion to the Cathedral of Santiago as well. There's two pilgrims there, Pope Benedict and Pope John Paul, who have both visited. This is the Botafumeiro. This is a sight to behold. This is the world's largest thurible, which in our Catholic faith is an incense dispenser. This thurible flies through the Cathedral of St. James at 60 miles an hour and travels probably 600 feet from one end of the cathedral to the other. It's just an incredible sight to behold this moving. When we finished our hike into Santiago, we also chose to go on to Finisterre. And if your Latin is better than mine, you might easily recognize, I had to look it up. But Finisterre means the end of the world. So the northwestern corner of Spain there, they thought that's where the world ended, obviously until Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492. But Finisterre was a side trip that we took to get to the Atlantic Ocean. And that's the picture that's on the cover of Hudson Monthly, is Marianne and I literally standing on the edge of the world there in Finisterre. I wanted to leave some time for questions. Is there anyone who has any questions about our trip? Sir. Art.
If you were staying in hotels or other facilities, how would you move your luggage on a daily basis?
That's a great question. Again, we didn't want to do the 40-pound packs on our back, but they did have a small bus that moved our things every day from one hotel to another. So we were taking it pilgrimage light, if you will. Some people would criticize us and say we weren't true pilgrims, but we were very prayerful and we were very devoted to walking. So I count us as pilgrims in that regard.
But it was beautiful to arrive at 5 o'clock with your luggage in your room, I have to say. That was really nice. And you know, the characters that you meet along the way, Joe mentioned two of them, but we come into the, whatever inn we were staying in, and we stayed in small inns in the small towns. So it's not like you were, pulling up into the West Inn or some big facility, because these are really tiny little towns. So you get a lot of local flavor. But obviously, people do the way for a lot of different, for a lot of faith reasons, to see the endurance. If you watch the movie, I would encourage you. One man was doing it to lose weight. Another woman was doing it to kind of get rid of some demons in her life and quit smoking, and a lot of different things. But you just meet some really fabulous characters, and everyone's so open to talking, and that's part of it. One night we came down to have a beer after we had showered, and there were 4 gals from Australia that were coming from different, one lived in Tanzania, one in New Zealand, and they're all best friends. So they decided for a holiday that they were just going to meet and hike the way. So we just had really a great time yakking with them and talking about their culture. So you see people from all walks of life who are doing it for a lot of different reasons. But I think some of the takeaway for us is having almost 2 weeks, I can't watch Spanish TV, and so we had really not much. Joe had his phone with him. My phone didn't have international capabilities, so you really realize how much we don't allow any quiet in our life. I get up in the morning, you flip on the TV, or Joe's turning on Squawk Box. It comes on at 5:30, see what the overseas markets are doing, and it's news, and you get in the car and you flip on music, or we're constantly, we have very little silence. And I think part of that is having so much quiet, you realize we don't do much reflection. And so I think one of the takeaways over the last year, Joe and I have been more purposeful about having quiet time in our life. We really do not turn the TV on pretty much anymore in the morning, or there's times in my car where I'll just not turn the radio on and just quiet, just think, because it gave us that time to slow down our life and just enjoy quiet, which is kind of nice. Yep.
Just a quickie. How far did you walk? About 1,000 miles?
Oh no! It was between 100 and 120 miles.
120 miles. How long was the whole trip?
We were gone about 13 days, but you have to. There's 2 full days of travel, because to get over, by the time you fly to New York and then over to Madrid, that's a full day. So you have 2 days of travel on the end. I think we hiked for about a week. So.
Joe, this is addressed to you. What demons did you get rid of, and would we know the difference?
Maybe I should answer that.
Yeah, maybe my conscience should answer. I will tell you, we're purposeful about silence, purposeful about prayer, and also purposeful about spending some more time hiking, walking, physical fitness. A little bit more aware of what I'm eating and when I'm walking. Those would be the
good for you, both of you.
Hey, thanks so much for having
Thank you,
us.
everybody.
So appreciate
We appreciate talking about this. We love it.
I see these mugs. They've been here the whole meeting, but I think they're for our speakers.
Oh, thank you.
I'm missing the basket of tickets for our drawing. I've got the money. I've got the marbles. While we're waiting for the ticket basket. Oh, thank you, Dan. We've got 2 openings still left for our food drive. We've got everything covered until next Friday or Saturday. That's October 3rd and 4th. So ask your wives, see if they will help. Last 4 digits. Well, it's not me. 9532. Aha! I'm going to bring the marbles. Jimmy, do you want to bring the marbles too? The payout is $10 and the jackpot is $421. And Carlin won first place for a bake-off. He didn't get the marble, but he gets $10, and he brought his certificate last week because he won first place at a bake-off for brownies, cookies, but I don't see them here today. I think we should ask him to come and share them with us. So that concludes our meeting. We'll see you next week.